Howdy folks, welcome back to another video. This video is supposed to be on the sidecar rig. We're going to go ahead and work on this Valkyrie, this 1997 Valkyrie that just kind of came in. That's an internal job, that's an external job, that takes priority. So we're going to go ahead and get on that first. We'll get to the Magna at some point, but it's going to be a while because if we don't get a hurricane, I'm going to be taking a trip out of state, go do some riding, and I might even make it to Barber vintage motorcycle weekend, October 10th through whatever that is. I might. It all depends on whether or not we get a hurricane. Anyway, we'll talk about that a little later or in another video, something like that. But we will get to this eventually. Oh, and I should also mention, this is not a new camera. This is my same phone and the same microphone. That whole situation fell apart. I ended up buying a new camera and a proprietary Sony mic, the ones I was telling you about in a previous video, and I kept getting a incompatibility error on the camera, and essentially I got pretty frustrated and ended up returning the whole thing because I'm kind of dealing with Sony with it right now. Kind of complained to them. Let me go out to my truck and get my surprise look that I actually complained, right? I will talk about it in another video. This is not the time for it. So this is the story on the 97 Valkyrie. Let's see if I don't get yelled at by doing this one. 33,758.4. How was that? And these tassels hanging here kind of make me want to stick a dollar bill into this tank bra. Let's go ahead and get this up out of the way. This customer indicated that at some point in time, I don't know how long ago, the bike sat because of a health issue. He couldn't ride, and the carbs got junked up by bad fuel and stale fuel, you know, the typical story. And then he had somebody up near him. I'm not going to say where he lives. I'm not going to say the shop because I can't remember the shop name anyway. But it's a part of the state of Florida where there's a lot of these little independent shops. He had somebody work on it. They charged him a crap load of money. He showed me the receipt. It's kind of a handwritten receipt, a little amateurish in my opinion. Allegedly put an all balls rebuild kit, or at least used parts of an all balls rebuild kit in these Valkyrie carbs, which you know how I feel about that. But anyway, I don't know what they did. I don't know what they used. But he said even when he got it back from them, it didn't run quite well. I got the bike in yesterday, and I really didn't want to be misleading because I did film some cranking or attempting to start clips. I'm going to go ahead and put those clips in here where I was trying to start it on camera. You can see what it's doing right now as it sits, because I'll tell you right now, it doesn't run. Let's go with fuel on. I'm going to give it a little enricher. Richer off. She don't want to go at all. Wonder if there's gas in it. That's with full choke on. As soon as I hit the throttle, kills. It kills it. Yeah, I can only get it to fire up on full enricher. Won't go anymore, and then it dies. All right, so what I mean by misleading is this thing doesn't run because it doesn't have any gas in it. Well, it doesn't have any good gas in it. I was under the impression that it did, and I was under the impression that it ran better than it does from when I talked to the customer about it, but I may have misunderstood. Yesterday, like I said, I tinkered with it already. After those clips where I was cranking it, try to start it, you can hear what it was doing or not doing. I drained the carburetors. You know, I smelled the tank. The tank smells a little varnishy, but not bad. I drained the carburetors because this thing actually still has, go buy a lottery ticket, drain hoses connected to the float bowls, so it goes down to that central location where they consolidate. It's like a little manifold, and then it comes out into one in the bottom. So I put a little container down there, drained number 5 and number 3 on this side. It is the stinkiest, worst smelling gas I think I have ever smelled. I wish I had smell-o-vision. It would make you guys gag. So I said, well, there's your problem, lady. So what we're going to end up doing is, and this brings up kind of a decision-making point. We know that somebody's tinkered with them. What have they done? Do we need to redo what they did? That is the question, because I don't want to charge the customer twice. That's what I mean by, I don't want to fool anybody. That's what I was kind of referring to in misleading you. I could have certainly just put fresh gas in it off camera, turned it on and go, look, I'm a miracle worker, but I'm not going to do that because I'm not 100% sure if that's just the problem or if the carburetors are compromised now. So I think what we're going to do is, because you already saw it crank and I drained some fuel out of it and it stinks to high heaven, the fuel's obviously bad, I am going to pull everything related to the seat and the tank off. Let's go ahead and put some fresh fuel into the fuel lines, drain these through, and we'll see if it fires up on fresh fuel. Let's see how it runs as it sits with fresh fuel. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to be real honest with you. I thought it was something different than it is. I thought these were worse, and they may be, but we're gonna edge up to it. We're gonna crawl before we walk, and we'll put some fresh fuel in and see where we're at right now. In a situation like this, that somebody's worked on a bike already, you really don't know how far you need to go without essentially duplicating what's already been done when it's not necessary to duplicate it, if that's the best way to put it. In other words, do we need to rebuild these carbs again if somebody's done it already? The only thing we do know, or we suspect, is that an aftermarket Chinese junk carb kit was used to rebuild these things. If they used any parts off of them at all, they may have only used a few. I've done that before, and sometimes you gotta charge the customer for the whole kit. If they bought an aftermarket kit and used all the kit components, that could be actually a real problem, because I don't know what the jet sizes are. They're usually not marked. Did they change the float needles out with those aftermarket junk? Because if they had OEM ones in here, chances are they're probably good and still reusable. That's why I'm not going balls to the wall and tearing into this thing like I typically do on a Valkyrie. If we had a carb joint between the two carbs dripping, I prefer to see that at this point, because that answers that question right there. The carb's got to be pulled and split, and while you got them split, you might as well take them to bits and do your normal thing. But do we really need to do it now? And I don't want to charge the customer labor and parts that I don't need to. So it's kind of a quandary we're in right now. We should do it that way if you really want to make sure that it's 100%. But we don't know if we need to do it that way, because this shop may have done a bang-up job on this. And apparently this thing has been sitting a hell of a lot more than what I was originally led to believe or understood, because it's got pretty terrible gas in the tank. If that's all the problem is, and we can just throw some fresh fuel in and see how it runs, then do we need to go any further? Again, that's kind of a quandary. So the theme of this video is going to be more like going over stuff that I commonly find, perhaps mistakes that are made by other people that work on them that I found, because this isn't the first one I've worked on that somebody else has already worked on it. And maybe kind of more of an abbreviated video on a Valkyrie, because I already have a number of very detailed carburetor rebuild where I explain everything and the air cutoff valves and all that stuff. I don't think we need to do it again. So I'll go ahead and get this off in here, and then we'll come back once the tank's gone, but I just wanted to mention that. There's your petcock. Somebody's written that on there. I didn't put that on there. But then you can see there's very little room up in here. The vacuum line for the petcock actuation is actually on the back side. You can't see it. Sometimes you can get at that from the other side. Clocking this, this fuel cock in so it comes out in the right location is a real pain in the butt on these. Especially when you got one of these custom finagle chrome pieces that goes around the fuel cock actuator knob, that big knob. Not that kind of knob, guys, this kind of knob. And this knob has a piece that goes up inside here. Normally that's just a regular bolt with an 8mm head. It's an M6 bolt on an unmolested version. But in this case we have this that goes in there. It has to line up with that hole in that thing down there. And it also has to line up to the petcock itself, so this thing doesn't get cattywampus and doesn't bind up. That's a real pain in the ass. I haven't really come up with a good way to document the clocking of that. It requires multiple events or operations of lifting the tank up, adjusting it, tightening it back up, dropping it down. That's what I found. I don't know any good way to do it. So if you run into that, I would say before you take it off, if this is lining up okay, use some sort of a thing for like even a straight edge or something. This is a threaded hole, probably M5. If you took a big long M5 screw and put it in there, it would come out like about right here. Then you can make a mark and use that as a kind of a ruler, if you will, to mark it in place. I might do something like that. I'll show you if I do, but that's one of the biggest pains in the butts on these that I have experienced because I really haven't come up with a good way to do it. How come you guys forgot to remind me to do this? I mean, what the hell are we fighting that for? That brings us to the next thought here. If I need to change out all these vacuum hoses, it's going to be extremely hard to do it with the carbs in place, especially with the air box in place. You might be able to get it with the air box out, but some of these run underneath. So you might say to yourself, well, I can get, and you can do it. You can do it with everything in place. But it would be easier to do it with the carbs out. So we're just going to kind of make a mental note that we need to replace all the vacuum hoses, which I would do anyway. And when we do it is the question at that point. Also, don't make the mistake I made on the last job. If you do take the carbs out, one thing, get out of the way. You have to take this coil out. I forgot this one is for 1 and 2, I think. Yeah, it's right here, 1 and 2. So don't forget to put it back in. And hook the ground up and the wires and stuff. And then wonder why it's only running on 4 cylinders. So it's another lesson learned on a mistake that I made. So I won't do that again. But we're not taking it out yet because we don't know if we need to pull the carb. But we are at a point where I can show you a couple things in here in regards to how they put this air box back in. Not super great. And also on this side, this one is really loose as far as the band clamps go, and that's a big no-no. You want these tight. So like this one over here, this is number 2, so 246135. You can see this one moving around like that. This is loose as a goose. I mean, I could probably turn it by hand. Yes, I can. I can turn that by finger tight. So those are not tight, so that's another mistake that you have to check for. And you may find these things loose anyway just from normal vibration. The VTXs are notorious for this. When you got a VTX where the carburetor goes into the manifold and then that manifold goes into the front and the rear jugs, has a carb holder there too, and then band clamps loosen up all the time and they're not easy to get to, so you need to check those as well. I can also see another problem in here. You can see right there, that is not connected. Now it's not really going to give you too much of a problem, it's just bad practice, but it needs to be connected. That circuit essentially is attached to the exhaust circuit. That goes into a collector on both sides that comes off of these little tubes, these steel tubes that come down off the exhaust sides, part of the like exhaust gas recirculation system for emission controls of the time. So that definitely needs to be connected, yeah. For that reason alone, and also good practice, as I said, but you can also get water down in there. So that's a mistake that I commonly see on these. That crap is not connected. And it was that way, I'm pretty sure, on the last Valk I worked on as well, that somebody had done work on. If somebody's worked on these things, you always want to check these guys too and see if they're down right. They're downright down. There's a fat guy right there. See him? Fat guy. Anyway, these things seem to be seated on 246 pretty well, and they seem to be tight. But on the other side, they're not so much. Let me show you. This number 135 on this side, that is mushed down on top of the screw. That's not good. But it's a little bit, it's not seated. You see how it's angled, that rubber right there? And you can see it really kind of flipped up in the back. So this one may be leaking. Number 3 is marginally better, and number 1 is terrible. That's barely down at all. You can see that one. They appear, they're not, this isn't even tight. See, that's not tight because it's not down all the way. In defense of whoever worked on it, these are a total pain in the ass to do, these octopus tubes. You know, they're kind of like octopus tentacles. You got to grease the hell out of them with the silicone grease and wiggle these things in, and they're a real pain in the ass. You can get them, it just takes time, and they didn't take enough time to do it. This is not snapped on, so they disconnected this and didn't hook it back up. So there's some signs here of some little bit of sloppy work. It tells a story. This tells a story to me that somebody didn't take appropriate time to make sure things were done exactly right. So if this ain't right and that ain't right and the band clamps are loose, then it brings us closer toward making a decision that maybe we need to pull these carbs out, because if that wasn't done right, then chances are stuff inside the carbs may have not been done correctly either. All right, I got you on the other side, and I've hooked up to the main fuel line. The OSHA approved dangly, hangly, fixed, not so fixed, swinging around auxiliary fuel can, hanging from an OSHA approved ceiling fan mount. I've got the container down there. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to drain these first. I'm going to flush or flow some fuel through and just kind of clean it out. See what happens, see what it looks like. Ugh. It's all going to come out down there if these are hooked up. Sorry about my fat face. Okay, that's coming out. A little bit hesitant. Oh God, I need a longer screwdriver. That's tight.
That's what she said.
Oh, wow, that's tight. Ugh. There we go. All right, you've seen these three. I'm going to do the other three off camera. That's what came out. Now, granted, I didn't flush it very long. And it stinks like varnish. So it's just yet another indicator that these carbs are going to have to get pulled. Because most likely the bottoms of them float bowls, if not some other parts inside the carb, like jets and so forth, are compromised with varnish and junk like this. I looked on the tank. The tank looks like it has a brand spanking new Cahin petcock, so that helps. Well, oh yeah, I gotta plug that vacuum line. These little rivet looking guys, they work pretty well for that. The right size. Let's give it some enricher. The fuel is back on, by the way. My auxiliary. Choke is on. Ooh, that ain't good. Take that choke off. Yeah, we're dealing with pretty much the same, dang tassels, pretty much the same thing we were before, and I got fresh fuel going into it. Now maybe we need to flush them a little bit more, as possible, which I might do here in a second. That's full choke. Yeah, as soon as you touch that, and it stinks bad. Yeah, nothing. Yeah. Well, we know for sure now that these are going to have to come out, which I suspected, but you know, as I said before, I didn't know at that point whether we needed to or not. And we're going to pull these out. I think I'm only going to show a little bit of it, like little bits and pieces, staying on the same theme of different things that I find that are more helpful, or what to watch out for when you're doing it. And we'll take it step by step in that regards. Air box. And then all the stuff inside there, like the pair valve, we'll get that out of the way. And then we have to get these engine mounts out of the way. Naturally, we're going to disconnect the battery first, of course, though, right? think the battery's there. Is that where it is? We'll find it. So yeah, is what it is, unfortunately. Dang it, need to go get a dollar bill. All right, so I took those trim covers off because they're not standard, so I don't really care about covering them, but that's what I found here. This is the little doodad that's supposed to go here to keep this exhaust thing sitting in place. So it's this little bracket. And with that thing on top of it like that, where you can't get at it, that's why that's not in place, because it was very hard for whoever did it to do that. We have to put that back. It's just something to watch for, because the last bike I worked on, that was missing as well. I had to make one for it. I don't like leaving this with just one fastener in each one of these manifolds, but this is very heavy casting, so it's not going to get warped or anything, and we got to take these off anyway. One at a time, pull them away from the carb holders, which usually takes the carb holders away from the carbs anyway to get this rack out, but we're getting ahead of ourselves, so I'll go over that really quick, what you got to do. We need to get this trim piece out of the way because we got to get the engine mount out of the way, which is behind it. Yeah, the engine mount goes from there to there. I can't remember exactly about the ignition switch, but we'll figure that out. I think that comes with the bracket. I don't really remember on that. It doesn't matter. You'll figure that out. But anyway, we got to get this cover off as well. This upper engine mount on this side, upper engine mount on that side. You can see the back of it there. I said before, all you got to do is push it away with the coil. I think I was wrong on that. You got to take the actual bracket out. So because this is modified with trim piece, you know, those little studs that come out, we just got to undo them. You can kind of see them right there, sort of. I'll show you on the other side. And then we can push the coils out of the way and then take that bracket out. So both of the brackets have to come out because you got to be able to have room to move this rack around. Air box. So to get the carbs out, I already told you need to move all that shit out of the way. Of course, we got to pull the air box out. The only bolt that holds the air box in is right back here. It's an M6. Take a 10 mil tool. To take the lid on or off or leave it on, I think it's up to you, but I like to take the lid off. That way I can pull the filter out and take kind of a look at it and see what it is. And then set it aside. It's just easier for me. And then we'll undo these band clamps. And then you just gotta kind of get a little bit rough with it. I showed you that in time warp on the last Valkyrie job. So we're just gonna pull this out the same way. You're gonna have to fold the things in just the way it is. Sometimes if you take these band clamps actually off after you break them loose, this comes off easier because this does not hook on anything like it wants to when they're in place, because it's inside these little grooves. Now on this guy right here, I noticed when whoever put this back together put the wrong bolt in, because that's not tight all the way up against there. They are different lengths because on the back side here, which I have to show you from the other side, because the wiring harness runs right next to the frame there, those are like acorn nuts welded into the frame on the back side, so they only allow that bolt to go in so far and it bottoms out, and that's to protect this wiring harness so there's no bolt sticking through to cut through it. So you got to make sure that you put the right length bolts in. There are a couple of non-standard bolts over there as well. They're hardware store stainless. So I don't know who did that. I don't know if that was done by the guy who worked on it or previous owner or whoever it was. But on this side is what I was talking about. We need to disengage these guys so we can push the coils out of the way. And it's this bolt, one behind this cover. I've already loosened these guys up because remember on the last bike, one of these was broke off and the other one was almost completely seized. These are loose. This was not tight at all, this small bolt here. So that's evidence again, a little sloppy work. Somebody didn't tighten up when they put it back together. So we're gonna get this cover off here. I don't believe you have to take this cover off, but if you do, there's a bolt down in here and then there's a couple of rubber or one rubber grommet, maybe two, and you just pull it out. I don't believe you have to take it out. I can't really remember, but I'm not gonna do it right now. This coil's gotta be removed, just hang it down the side. You gotta remember to put it back on like I didn't do the first time on that last job. Then we get the air box out. Then we'll work on the intake manifolds. Make sure you cover up those holes when you take them off. I have those little caps. You can just use rags or paper towels. And then we have to get this off. You can do this first, these trim pieces. I have the one off on the other side that covers the synchronizers and the cables and so forth, because the choke cable comes in here. You got to disengage on this side. You can leave the one that goes to the other side in place at this time. Let's Get this guy off first. This is probably a 13. This is a 12 I got on it there, yeah. So this is 12. Try loosening it. Oh yeah, we got to take the dipstick out. But it opens this up pretty good, and then we can get all this off. Yeah, I think that's the wrong one in that spot. It's too long, you see? What the Hades is going on, baby? You gotta remember where that goes. I'm not even sure if that's right. This is non-standard for sure. That's a hardware store job. We'll use a Quada inch drive. There we go, 13 mil socket. These are not tight. As you can see, those are the actual top 2 engine mount bolts. So yeah, not tight at all. Those are M8, so they should be tightened up to about 17, 18 foot-pounds. This guy is an M10. I'd have to look the torque specs up on it. Sometimes these are pretty tight. I usually don't want to hit these with an impact to start with. I'll put a small breaker bar on it. I think that's a 14 mil socket. Try to break that one loose. So if somebody's been in here and taken these carbs off, this shouldn't be that tight. Nope, it's not. They didn't tighten it up that much because this has to happen to get these carbs out. You gotta remove this stuff to get these carbs out. There is no way to do it otherwise, and you don't have the room to move stuff around, but these bolts always get funky looking with corrosion or whatever that is on there. We clean that off and we put some Never Sneeze. You'll notice that there's a hose that goes up into the air box. I'll talk about that in a second. This is a collector for the breather. The breather hose for the crankcase goes down the crankcase there. You can leave that connected. There's a main wire for the ignition switch that'll limit you as far as how much you can move this until you release this wire tie. Then this thing will float around, then you can move it out of the way. But before you do that, make sure you put your dipstick back in to protect that hole, or shove a piece of paper, not paper, but a rag or something over top of it until you get to that point. But inside here is a hose that goes up to the air box. There's supposed to be a clamp like this on the top of it. You can see the witness marks from it. That is not there. It wouldn't be on the airbox side because it would fall off. It's the size of this hose, not the size of the nipple. So that wasn't done correctly either, but all you gotta do with this is just kind of shove it over to the side. If you're worried about scratching anything, just put a rag or something. I'll do that here in a moment, because this is gonna get jostled around a little bit. You don't want this part running into the side cover. You can always take the plastic side cover off, but I'll just cover it up with a rag. And then just get you out of the way, and then you can move over to other stuff. I've already taken this part off, which we're gonna do on the other side. So right now on this side, not a whole lot more we got to do besides loosen the band clamps and take the throttle cables off to get these out, which we'll do the throttle cables pretty much last or second to last. When you don't have all this farkling on it, that's the word, I'm pretty sure there's just a couple of 8mm socket M6 bolts that hold that coil in. So we have these guys, which are little studs that screw into where they would normally screw into the coil bracket here, I think it is. Now I just did what I didn't want to do, and that's why I'm showing you this, is there's spacers behind here. This can be a real pain in the butt, and it's super hard to show you. But I see where it fell. There's a spacer behind here. These type of spacers. Because it needs to be spaced away from the coils, because there's just not enough room for it to sit flush. So there's one. The other one is still in place, but when you back out, whether it's these fasteners or the OEM ones, you got to capture these spacers. Make sure you don't lose them. And all you got to do is just kind of let them hang here and just get them out of the way, because all we want this engine mount is what we want. So we got to get this off. I'm just going to take this off camera. You've already seen me do one, you know, this cover, and then we'll get it out of the way, and then go ahead and I'll take the engine mount off camera as well, because you already saw me do that one. Okay, so I'm taking this off, and as soon as I move it, this falls out. There's your hose clamp for the other side of that breather that I was mentioning on the other side. So somebody didn't put it in and just let it sit there, and it fell down and migrated down into there. On this side, it's just a small bolt that holds this in there. That's all I'll mention on this, because this is a stud with a threaded end. So we're gonna get this off. I think that's a 17. Here's another hint for you. Do not use these type of tools to take that off. By the way, that's not a 17, it's a 15. This is a 15 mil, well, not even 15. It'll fit a 15, I think it's 16. It's not 17. 17's too big. I don't know why it's weird, but this is 16. It's a very weird size bolt. That is definitely OEM, but it's not 17 and it's not 14. That's 17. That's weird. And then if it's a ratchet wrench, you won't be able to get it off. You can't go any further with it if it isn't loose enough to spin it by hand. And then you have to beat the thing off to put something else on. So you just have to kind of search around to get a socket or something that fits it properly. This is a 16, that fits it pretty good. So we'll use that. I don't know why it's a non-standard or just a weird size. But don't use a wrench on that because it'll get jammed up, especially a ratchet wrench. These are pretty tight. Ta-da! Got to get this coil out. So you want to mark these. The black with the white is here, and then you got a yellow that goes up there, and your green is your ground. So I usually just hit them with a marker. Again, I'm giving you the tips, not tips, but the tips and the hints on taking these apart that I've learned from doing a few of them. I also found this laying on the lift, probably from one of these guys. I'll show you this too here. There is a drain hose. It's that brownish shaped hose that goes on the bottom of the box. So there's essentially 3 hoses that have to go on the bottom of that air box. That pair valve hose that I showed you before that's not connected there, this brown one, and then that breather. So we're gonna have to pull that one off. That one's the only one that was actually on right, it looks like. Anyway, I'll get the coil off, mark the wires. You gotta take this guy off and then do the choke cable. But this is a JIS bit, by the way, in my impact, which is on its last legs. You got to take these guys off. There's 3, 1, 2, 3. These are already pretty much marred up from somebody using a regular Phillips screwdriver on them. Let me go out to my truck and get my surprise look. Enrich your. Get her off. Pull it out. Push it in and twist it. Bob's your uncle. Throttle cable is pretty much the same deal. That's loose. Look at this. The throttle cable's not tight. That one sort of is. Let's see, this one is your push. Usually your push cable does not have any double nut on it like the pull cable does, because that has an adjustment. So you can pretty much almost always tell your push cable by the fact that it only has 1 nut on it. You know, it only got a nut 1 time. So basically, in manufacturing, they deprived it of a nut, which is really kind of sad. And that's not tight either. So the throttle cables weren't even tight on this. That's a big deal. I'm going to tell you right now, that is a big, big deal not to have your throttle cables tight by somebody who's working on your machines. I'm pretty anal about that, as you might expect. Go out to your truck and get your surprise look. You definitely want to have those tight. That could lead to a jammed up cable, and you can't get the thing to either throttle down or throttle up at a critical time, and that would be bad. So this is, again, I'm only mentioning this stuff because somebody's worked on this before. Chances are you're going to get one of these bikes where somebody's worked on that one as well, and what to look for, and don't make these mistakes. It's the only reason why I'm mentioning this stuff. Otherwise, I just pull this crap off. I'm not necessarily giving you instruction on how to do it. I'm kind of giving you tips on what to avoid or what to look for, and then you can do a better job making sure that your work is really competent. And that's a big deal when somebody doesn't put throttle cables back in correctly. That's probably why they had this disconnected here. You can't see, That's probably why they had this disconnected up in here, because they were trying to finagle these cables in and out. And you can pull them up all the way and get them out of your way, which it's easier to do that when you take this little cover out. See, they don't have the push nail in here. You see how that's missing as well? We'll put a new push nail in for them because I stock those. But otherwise, there should only be a little, like, rubber dealio or something up in here holding this in place. There it goes, like that, little clip. It's easier when you can get that out of the way. Move some of these wires thing and just pull the cables out. Get them out of your way completely. So that's just a little hint on doing that. Just get them out, but remember how they're routed. When you're putting these cables in or any throttle cables in, you really just want to kind of go with logic, how they want to fit, because they're going to maintain their bends and little things like they were in there, as they were rather when they were in there. So just use that as your guide. This was not pushed in there correctly. So there's just evidence that somebody's been in here, they didn't do a terribly complete job or good job on it. Especially this. This is a big deal. So I'm glad that we're doing this. Airbox. You take these two out in the back, secure them. You don't need to take the rest out because they're captured by this little feature on this plastic. What I wanted to tell you was that none of these, well, some of them are tight. All of them on this side were loose. In other words, not even threaded in. This side is. This is really easy to forget. This is why I'm bringing it up. And there's one in the very front too, which I think I've already gotten. All right, filter. She looks good. That's how the inside of the airbox looks if you haven't seen one before. Take that bolt out, but I like to put it right back in because I always lose it. I don't know why. It like always goes AWOL. You just shove it back in. Anytime you're working on above carbs and things that are open, if you're going to put a bolt back in, tighten it up. Even this one, because heaven forbid it comes loose while you're taking carbs off and you don't see it and it falls down inside the intake or something. Or secure it in a manner that is better than when I do. When I took the coil off the other side, I put them bolts back in. I tighten them up for the same reason. It's just something I do, but I don't want to lose it, so I'm going to put it there. It'll flex enough for you to do that, but right now, I really need to do something with these guys. I'm sorry about these tassels, but normally I like tassels, but I don't do that anymore. None of these band clamps were tight. They were snug, they were not tight. So another indication. I want to get these clamps out of the way completely. On this side, it's got this bleeding hard line, which is a real pain in the keister. In my opinion, it helps just to get them out of the way. And then they don't catch on nothing. And you notice I got the wiring cable completely dislodged now from its mounting locations. And when I go to put it back in, I do it the reverse of this. So really, at this point, we just force the son of a bitch out. Kind of like that. And immediately, and I mean immediately, you look down the carbs and make sure that nothing's dropped down in there like dirt. We're gonna go ahead and get this paravalve out right now because that's got to get out of the way. Fuel lines, they run under that paravalve. But we got to disengage the paravalve and get it out of the way. One of the more common questions that I get is how the vacuum lines go. And this is, by the way, not a good way to cap a vacuum hose with a bolt. That's amateurish, okay? That's like, you know, 14-year-old level. Right now it doesn't matter. I will go over that in more detail when we put these carbs back in, but I'll show you that. Now, band clamps, here's another notation for you as far as something I've learned. Take a photo of these. These are correct on this as far as the orientation. These go a certain way on each side. You want to be able to get at the lower ones directly without any funky co-medina. As you can see on the top ones here, you'd have to use a wrench or a little socket coming in from the right. On the other side, that's the opposite. You can get them from the back. And those will be at this angle here. But the reason for that is you can actually put these carb holders on the carbs before you put them in, and then you just insert these guys, tighten them up, and then you can put the manifolds in once everything lines up. Or I should say bolt the manifolds in. So it's really easy to do that way, but if you take them off completely and you mess them up as far as orientation, if you have some photos, you want to be able to line that up. So that is definitely a tip for you that I have experienced myself in not paying enough attention to it. Then it took me half an hour to figure out. And work off the manifolds like that, which sometimes are tight because these things are petrified. We're going to replace the manifolds. Not the manifolds. We're going to replace the carb holders. And these are flatter than, you know, these have not been replaced. If they have been replaced, they've been replaced with junk. So we're going to definitely do those. All right, that's why. I forgot I got to angle it. You got to angle this thing back kind of catty corner like this. So you angle it this way, and then you got to clear everything that wants to hang up on it, because everything will want to hang up on it. I did pull that center pair valve hose out. You really don't have to. You can maneuver it around. What I forgot to take off was the drain. See, I'm showing you my mistakes as I go along here. I forgot to take the drains off of each one of the carbs. This is that carb drain apparatus with the little octopus they all go to, which I've completely displaced now. It kind of lies straight on, and these things flop over from one side to the other like this. So I forgot to do that. So I'm showing you my mistakes as I go along, so you hopefully won't do that, but I just forgot to do it. That was hanging me up the most. We'll go ahead and take the rack and just put it over on the table, and that's going to do it for this part of the video, and then we'll revisit this at another episode. So yeah, this was missing, I think, on the last two bikes. So this is your central drain for all the carbs, and these go into individual carbs. I probably don't have enough hose to replace these, but if they're in a good enough shape, we're just going to reuse them because they're just carb drains anyway. But anything that pulls air vacuum-wise is most definitely getting replaced. And that would be any of these guys here, like the number 10 guy that goes up to the fuel cock, vacuum fuel cock, and the other one for the pair valve that I showed you earlier. And unlike the last one with all the California valving and stuff on there, there isn't nearly as much to deal with as far as vacuum goes. This was actually very simple. Just forgot that I needed to cock it to get it out. So pretty simple stuff. All right, guys, it's late. I'm tired. The dog's bugging me, and bugs are flying in my face. So let me close this video out because I want to get it up on the channel. I'm going to do video 2 the same way I did this one, kind of cover the highlights, things that I've picked up on the carbs, and not great detail like in the other videos. If you're new to the channel and you haven't seen any of the other Valkyrie videos, then this one may not make a lot of sense to you, nor will video 2. So you're going to have to go watch the original Valks videos. I'll make sure, I hope I have them in a playlist, but I'll develop a playlist and put them all in there for that. And then you can look at the Valkyrie videos, which those are in a great amount of detail as far as the carbs go. I mean, I really deep dive in those. We are not going to deep dive in these because it's been covered several times in other videos. That's about it. So I hope you got something out of it. Hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I sure enjoyed myself. Make a couple mistakes. I'm going to include them in there because it's a learning process, and that way you won't make the same mistakes I do. Because remember, I screw up, so you don't have to. With that in mind, like, share, subscribe, share it with Aunt Tilly. You know, she likes Honda Valkyries. Share it with your friends. It helps my channel out a lot if you like and subscribe. I really appreciate when you do that. Doesn't cost you a cent, I promise. And again, it just helps me out immensely. Then you get notified when I put more stuff like this up. As always, thanks for watching. Don't just repair, restore. Catch you on next video. What do I do with my hands?